Good afternoon and welcome along to Destination Wellbeing. My guest this afternoon is Paul Kay, and Paul and myself are going to chat about nutrition. January being the perfect time for doing that. My last nutritionist that we had on was just before Christmas, so reminding us how to be healthy over Christmas and get the balance between the excess and keeping everything healthy. But now we're into January and I suppose New Year's resolutions and all of that. And hopefully we'll have some interesting thoughts and dispel some of those myths that are out there, Paul. Just to remind any of our viewers that if they have any concerns about their health or their well-being, that of course the first protocol is their doctor. This is just based on our opinions and our knowledge. Always doing your own research. And as I said, Paul and I are going to chat a bit about some of the nutritional information that gets put out there and that we become subjects of the marketeers, really, I think is the big thing on it. But if we can individually each take responsibility for checking things out, looking at things, and I think for me, Paul, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, is that we're often just exposed to labels and information, and it's nearly information overload, and then we shut down, but we forget that we can be the experts ourselves. Do you find that with many of your clients, or how does that?
I do find that common complaint that people have is that they are confused. There is so much information that's thrown out there and so much conflicting information. Mm-hmm. So it does kind of turn people away rather than encourage them to take the initiative and to explore for themselves.
Yeah, that's the difficulty. So, Paul, nutrition has it always been an interest? It hasn't always been your profession, I suppose, or has it?
That's correct. It hasn't always been my profession, but it has always been an interest from a very young age. In fact, it was in my teens that I was first interested in studying it, which I never did till much later. Yeah,
well, that's sometimes always the best things are the things we come to later, I find as well, is that I was speaking to a girl the other day who at 33, 34, just trained to be a paramedic, and she said she'd always wanted to do it, but now realises she would have been too young to do it because she wouldn't have had the life experience of doing it that she now has. So experiences can be one of life's greatest teachers, I think, really.
I think so, because you have the experience and then you can form more of an opinion and a belief about things rather than just learning information when you're perhaps younger. The experience has to back it up.
I think the more we have now at the minute, we do have information overload because Google is just a click away, and any information we want is available there. But it's being able to discern between what's legitimate and proper and correct and factual based versus what's fantasy or what somebody has created as an image, really, isn't it?
It's true. There is so much out there. It can be a negative. On the whole, it's a positive that you can have that access to finding information, but it is honing it down and being able to define things that are, well, essentially right for the person themselves, because what's right for one person isn't for another. And
nutrition really comes back, it's the foundation of everything, isn't it? Any health problem, anything, we are what we eat. And I suppose Hippocrates has been famous, and I think got the right person. I'm attributing this quote to the right person. But the idea of let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. It's allowing that actually we're looking to our food supply as our health care rather than our sick care.
Absolutely, I believe it's key, and I believe that if you pay more attention to what you're eating, because it's fuel for the body, then it will keep you healthier, so that you're not just becoming health conscious when you're sick, which is a common problem.
Yeah, we often become aware of our health when it's too late. Prevention being better than cure at all times. And I think as well as that, we think about a lot of the time, and I think it's possibly changing. If we'd have been having this conversation 10 years ago and we were talking about nutrition and health and food and diet and things like that, most people would have thought that we were talking about losing weight exclusively. Whereas now, which we probably would have been, whereas now there's a much broader look on nutrition as to how it can help with chronic illness, right from arthritis, even supporting people through cancer, chemo treatment. So it's not an either or forever, but it's also that, look, I'm taking what I can to support my body through this change that it's going through.
Yes, because the complications that can arise are when there is a hereditary factor within for people, which sometimes you can't avoid. But what you can do is you can help protect yourself from at any stage, whether you're young, middle-aged, or older. So it is prevention. People I've spoke to before have said, "Oh, what's the point? I'm at such and such an age now." And I says, "Well, the point is, it's about quality of living. You know, it is hard to change people's habits, dietary or nutrition habits, but it will pay off in the long run." I personally am more interested in a not only living a longer life, but one with more quality.
Well, yeah, I was watching a documentary, and I've mentioned this a few times on Destination Wellbeing, but where pretty much the statistics show that most of us in our 30s, 40s now will live to be over 100. That's pretty much where where the medical world has taken us. And that's a number, that's living, that's still existing on the planet. But how many of us are actually living at that point? How many of us are going to be healthy enough to function at that point? Does living mean being in residential care where you're not able to function correctly yourself? Or does living actually mean being here and living a healthy, fulfilling lifestyle? And that, I suppose, for me, that's one of the biggest challenges, is that, and I think, but also one of the points you made there, interestingly, was that, you know, it pays off long term, but it also pays off in the immediate term as well, because if you're eating healthier, you're feeling better today.
Yes.
It's like your insurance policy, but you get the benefits every day, as well as waiting for, you know, we're in an endowment policy or something like that. We have to wait till it pays out at whatever age it matures at. But when we're looking after our health and looking after nutrition,
it's true. Is that recently I put a little post up on, I have a Facebook page, and it was just basically a photograph as well of a sun rising. And just the little analogy I made was that the sun comes up every day fresh, and it comes up every day. We can live every day fresh, you know, and not just, as you say, it's not just for the future, it is for now. You know, and when people say commonly, you meet somebody and you'll overhear a conversation in the street where somebody's saying, "Ah, how are you?" And they'll say, "Oh, struggling on." I don't particularly want to struggle on. I want to actually live day to day where I'm not struggling with my health, where I am healthy. And we can be.
And as I said, whilst there's other elements to that, nutrition is certainly one of the biggest ones. In terms of, I suppose, since you began looking at nutrition and in much more depth, what were some of the biggest revelations that you had? Was there anything that struck you as being an area of your own possible diet that maybe you needed to look at, or surprise factors?
Well, it's only when you start exploring the nitty-gritty of nutrition that you discover such a lot that, you know, even obviously I wasn't aware of. I think one of the key areas or revelations that I have had is how important stomach health is, because most are around you know, 60% of our immune cells live in our stomachs, in the gut. So if the stomach isn't right, then nothing else is right. Okay, because that's where our immune system it comes from. So that was a bit of a revelation. So, you know, it's really important to get that right, because you can be taking this thing or that thing or eating this and that, but if there's simple things like, you know, stomach acid that isn't, you know, acidic enough for digestion, then it will you know, prevent other health benefits.
Well, so instantly, as you say, you know, so much of our immune system is based in our gut, in our stomach. I often use the analogy when I'm talking about low-fat products or low-sugar products or whatever versus the full-fat alternative. And whilst it is all about balance and getting the balance right, I personally am a big advocate of natural products in their natural state, whether that is full fat or whatever it is, in moderation, obviously not every day, but over even the smallest amount of low fat, hydrogenated fats, sugar, aspartame and artificial sweeteners. But one of the analogies that I use is that idea that you know, we're looking at so many now people who are suffering from basically immune disorders where their immunity has been compromised. But I think it happens us every day. because our body, there's food get into our body that it doesn't recognize as protein, fat, carbohydrate, or any of the common food, I suppose, the basic chemicals that we would be familiar with within food. Instead, it's getting bombarded with preservatives, additives, colorants, all of these things are going in. And the first decision it has to make is, do I fight this with an immune response, or do I fight it, do I begin to digest this product? And therefore the immune system is being overworked nearly and unnecessarily, because it's trying to identify what exactly is this product and what do I need to.
This is true, because when we ingest those things, when we eat those things, they're alien to the body. The things you're talking about with the preservatives and added sugars and sweeteners. Sweeteners. So I personally am an advocate of eating the natural food. I will always advocate that in basically what is naturopathic, which is basically food as it is, food without having been tampered, because it's then that the immune system does become compromised, as you say, at risk, therefore can lead to illness and to just poor health.
Yeah. It's so confused. Our systems are so confused, I think. And that leads to so many different problems.
And it is, it's an area that people are confused about. When there's such marketing that's out there for, diet drinks, low fat products, low fat foods, when you're actually going to be healthier just going for the full as it comes. Because basically, with the introduction of preservatives and chemicals into the food production system, way back as long ago as the 50s, it's only now we're beginning to see the effects of that. And it's still early days, so that's when it started to enter the food chain, food production, that now we have such high rates of disease.
Yeah, well, we're looking at something like, I think the figures stand at overall, not just through food, but through cosmetics and cleaning chemicals and things like that, that there's between 70 and 100,000 different chemicals being introduced since the end of World War II, which is, as you said, the late 40s, 50s. And our bodies just, whilst they are evolving and they probably, survival of the fittest and stuff will all kick in at some point, and the body's amazing and can adapt and grow to all different things, but that time frame is for me, it's just a huge, you're talking what, 60, 70 years to be able to cope with 70,000 new things coming into your body. We're only talking 3, possibly 4 generations in some cases, and we're seeing now that younger children are being so affected.
Absolutely, and it doesn't help the fact as well that the young generation now are growing up with a very passive lifestyle. They're not as energetic and physical as once before the computer age really kicked in. So that on top of all these food issues that we're talking about, it just compounds and just leaves
to such imbalance, really, because calories in or energy in, for want of a better word, energy out, and it has to balance in there somewhere, whereas we've changed our food supply and reduced our activity level and somewhere along the line. But even not just, I suppose, again, not just talking about the weight perspective, if we look at conditions, ADD, ADHD, asthma, there's just such, even children getting into puberty younger, there's such a wide range of conditions that I think can all be traced back really to the food supply.
Yeah, you can pretty much trace it back to that particular introduction when things started to be tampered with in a big way with the food chain, and even things like the increase of dementia and Alzheimer's, and a lot of the other motor neuron diseases as well is very, very alarming. I think it's important to remind people as well, which I remind clients when I have them, is that it is everything in balance. Because to bombard somebody with too many changes in their life is too much to deal with. So even little simplistic changes and slight small steps are better to getting to a more optimum health than
I suppose it's long-term changes, isn't it? It's lifestyle. It's creating a new lifestyle. Is rather than a detox diet for 4 days, or you know, I'll do this for a month, and then you're right back to kind of square one. Whereas one of the things I would talk about is that diet should be what you eat.
Yeah.
There's really no such thing as I'm on a diet.
Yeah.
It's your diet is what you're taking in, or should be what we're taking in every day, to support optimum health, rather than saying, well, I'm on a diet this week.
Diet is a particular term that I don't use specifically, because I prefer to use, you know, your food intake, or your nutrition, or you know, your daily nutrition. What's it like? Because diets they conjure up this. They certainly conjure up calculating calories, which confuses people as well, and puts people under pressure, I find. Whereas, especially this time of year when people have had maybe a overindulgent Christmas.
Yeah, and really right through from November time it starts, doesn't it, with parties and all that sort of thing. So we all overindulge, for want of a better word, which is good too.
And that is, you know, everything in moderation is what I say, because life would be very dull if we didn't have, you know, those little pleasures. But it's when you get your balance, the greater part of the balance right, so that the scales aren't tipped the other way, that you can have those little, you can spoil yourself in that way.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's, you know, if we look at moderation, we look at balance, and we balance it out, as you say, with the exercise and that wee bit, then that's where you're getting yourself both physically supported but also emotionally supported. And that's an area that I would be really interested in, is how important diet is for our emotional well-being.
Yes, very much so. And just thinking about it, just going back to what I said about the link between, you know, the immunity, the cells that live in the stomach. It's interesting, one of the other things I discovered through study was, you know, the links between the brain and the stomach. You know, they share the same part of a human embryo when we're growing.
We're created,
so that's why there's a strong link between the stomach and the brain and the head. When people say, "Oh, I was gutted when I heard this," you know, or if you're feeling a bit off in your head, you don't want to eat, or if you're feeling off in your stomach, you get a bit depressed or a bit down, and they're intrinsically linked, and that's why it's so important to give your body what it should have.
What it's needing. And that, I know there's quite an increase in sort of the awareness, or maybe it's just, I suppose it depends. You can increase your awareness depending on where you focus your thought, can't you really? But in terms of organic food and more people, certainly over the last couple of years, I increasingly know more people looking at grow your own, you know, growing at home, producing some vegetables, not everything maybe, but and for me, that's something that I hope to do this year a bit more of. I grew some potatoes and some tomatoes and some bits and pieces last year, and the taste and the flavour and everything in them is just so much more. There's
no comparison.
Absolutely none, no.
You know, it's when you go to the likes of some of the other countries, like I remember going to Spain last year, and you go into a supermarket and you just see all this luscious, all these luscious vegetables and fruits.
Even the smell when you walk in, you get it as soon as you go in.
But they're also odd shaped. They're not all, you know, the same, like we would see a lot in our supermarkets here. And it's a great thing that there is people growing their own produce.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And it's great for children as well to see where food comes from. And it doesn't take, I mean, I'm saying growing potatoes. I mean, I have a patio. If, you know, it wouldn't be much, the space that I have wouldn't be much bigger. It's not a patio, but it wouldn't be much bigger than that.
Yeah.
But I've been able to grow sort of maybe a couple of hundred potatoes in bags. And it's, you know, it's the flavour of them and the taste of them. In fact, I actually gave them to a friend one evening and we were talking about, and he says, God, he says, they were really filling. But they were just out of the ground, so all of the goodness was still in there.
It's you can't beat seeing produce and but there's still dirt on it as well, because it's just more natural. You know, rather than
even the smell of tomatoes when you're growing them in the kitchen. You know, and you've got them. Mum has a patio door actually, and so it becomes a real greenhouse in the summer, even if there's not much sunshine. But you can smell, you just touch the leaves and the flavour and the smells already.
Yeah, and I'm just reminded in the summertime there, I was over visiting a friend in England, and he took me a walk through a allotment that he has a little plot, and I couldn't believe it was like walking through the Garden of Eden. and I don't joke.
Yeah.
We were picking different things off different trees. There was cherries, there was plums, and we got to a certain point, and my friend said to me, "I'm going to pick you the most delicious apple you've ever eaten," and he took me to this tree, and the apples were like blood red. And I took one bite out of it, and I just couldn't believe the taste. Honestly, it blew me away, because I'd never tasted an apple like it, I have to say.
Yeah, my mouth's watered already.
Honestly, it was just incredible.
Yeah, it's and I think that's, but certainly, as I said, I know the organic movement is one thing, and people have mixed opinions as to whether that's where do you sit with the organic side? I know the homegrown's one bit, but actually purchasing organic.
No, I'm absolutely a full advocate of that.
Yeah, I think it's
the problem some people have, especially families, is the cost, and fortunately, organic produce is not as much more expensive than non-organic. You know, it seems that the sort of gap is not as broad as it was.
Yeah.
But there are ways to. It's again going back to balance. If even partially your diet is organic and some of it's not, it's still better than not at all.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the big things I would always recommend to people. People said to me, if you were buying organic, what would you buy? For me, milk is certainly one that I think is an organic purchase where you can, and there's not a big difference, maybe 20p on 2 litres or something like that. But again, you're avoiding the residues of possibly antibiotics, the residues of hormones, and all of that, all those side of it. So for me, milk is one that I say, you know, it can be done, and I know it doesn't have to be done even through big supermarkets. It is certainly, you know, in the Newry area, and I'm sure a lot of towns and cities across the north, not just Northern Ireland, but across the island of Ireland and across the world, where you can access organic milk quite easily. I mean, it's not, it used to be people would have looked at you and said, what are you doing? Where would you get that? But now it's quite easily available, and it's available in some of our local supermarkets here. And then, of course, another one would be chicken. Those two would be my two key choices.
I would agree. Personally, I'm not a milk drinker, but when it comes to chicken, that's definitely the order for me. It's organic, free range, and that's where it would stop at a push. You know.
Well, I've over the last few years totally, pretty much eradicated chicken from my diet. But if I was, because I do think it can be tasty, but if I am, then it's
and it's awareness, and it's education for people, because you'll go into a supermarket, and you'll see an offer or something reduced, and it is difficult when a budget is low. But there are ways, I believe, to look at your budget and what you're spending and what you're buying, and just make little changes to be able to afford a nice organic chicken. But just cut back in another area. Well, it's going back to habits.
It is.
Again.
And even whenever people are making things like maybe spaghetti bolognese and things like that, I would say, you know, bulk it up with some pulses in there, or reduce your mince in it, but buy better quality mince, and have a bit more pasta. Put some grated carrot into it, because that's a great way of hiding the vegetables in there. And using some of the vegetable ingredients to substitute for the meat ingredients, but being able to put in a better quality meat, be it meat, chicken, fish, whatever dish you're making. Bulk it up with some vegetables and beans and pulses and things like that.
This is it, because what that helps to avoid is overeating, because as you probably know, you've got some more beans and pulses in there, then they're going to be more slow releasing energy and going to make you feel fuller for longer. So rather than just maybe having mince, and maybe the odd carrot, which you'll be hungry, hungry quicker.
Quite quickly,
So that's all that it's about.
We chatted briefly about we've obviously touched a little bit on it there in terms of the substitution of low fat and full fat products and things like that. Another one that it's recently hit the papers, and if anybody follows my Facebook page, they'll see me putting some information out on that. But it's the argument around full fat versus skimmed or semi-skimmed milk. And it's one again that I've been a big advocate. And this is, I think, where the confusion comes in, because people are given information on one hand and they're totally contradicted on the other hand, where people will say, no, full fat milk's much better, and then somebody else is saying, no, it's too fatty. And whereas I would be looking at it maybe from a vitamin D point of view, that you're going to have more of that in to help you absorb the calcium as well. So there's a lot of
exactly
different opinions there.
Yes, and it is confusing. There's some people in my family would have skim milk and only skim milk, and I am always saying, look, if you're going to have milk, then have the real stuff, the full fat, because it's the producing, manufacturing, and what's involved to take the fat out of it that is the danger, and yes, and the nutrients that you're losing, because
And milk's a pretty pure one. I mean, the processing of that, I suppose, the homogenization and the extraction, they generally don't put anything in to replace it. So at least, whereas with a sugar-free product, there's something going in that's going in to replace it. But I remember when I was studying at college, I studied at Loughry College, the food centre in Cookstown, and we had one lecturer at the time who used to talk about, he was the dairy lecturer, and he'd done all the dairy conversations, and he would have talked about full fat milk. And he said, full fat milk in its full ordinary normal form is still 96% fat free. And if I was to go in and stick 96% fat free on all of the 2 litres of, it was actually pints of milk at the time, he says, if I was to go in and stick labels on all the pints of milk and say that it was 96% fat free, he says I couldn't keep it on the shelves. Whereas we see it as a fat product, but yet something else that's 96% fat free is seen as being a healthy product. So I think a lot of it does come down to marketing, really, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and it's all about, as well, it is marketing, and you can't deny the fact that it is about sales as well. But also those products, such as the fat-free products, certainly with milk, when they're stored in the cartons, for longer, again, there you've got a problem, because in order to keep them, to preserve it for longer, it's not natural. So the more natural, the more fresh, the better. And it's probably in the forms of the sort of the UHT milk, certainly, where it's been so heat treated that there could be very little remaining left in it. But I suppose, and as this time of year is a busy time of year, I'm sure for you, as people are starting their new Year resolutions, although I don't particularly like that word. But no, I don't either, and I think you should just have a resolution that is for the whole of the year rather than times of the year. Make a resolution, make a life resolution.
Make it. Well,
ideally.
On the show a few weeks ago, I done a show on New Year's resolutions, and if anybody hasn't seen it, they can catch it back through the Destination Uri page and on the video page. But one of the things that I put out to people was Cheryl Richardson had shared a quote over Facebook around Christmas, around New Year time, and she had said, what if the only resolution you made this year was to love yourself more? And for me, that covers everything. That covers what you're eating. It covers your exercising, because if you're actually loving your body more and you're nurturing it and you're supporting it, that's right down to the people you associate with, through to the job that you do, through to what you eat, how you exercise, what cosmetics you use, everything. It just ticks that one simple box, that if we actually love ourselves more, it doesn't make sense to pollute our bodies. That's true.
And as a sort of an add-on to that, it's, there's a lot of people who need to be encouraged to even like themselves more. Which then leads to loving themselves, more, and then that will have a big effect on how they live and what they put into themselves,
and how much they respect their body. I've often been quite controversial in saying that you can eat anything you want. It's just deciding that what you want is what's right for your body. So you I suppose, get yourself to the stage where what you want is the right food, rather than wanting the food that's not going to support your growth and your health and your well-being. So
this is it.
It's an education, and
it is, and the thing with certainly with nutrition is that it's something that you're always learning about. It's not something that needs to complicate you or scare people off because of information or knowledge. It's just, once you make that, take that step to make a change in that with your nutrition and what you're eating, it then does become, as we said before, a lifestyle.
It's making positive lifestyle choices, really. And well, Paul, thanks a million for your time this afternoon, and hopefully we've inspired some thoughts and encouraged people to think a little bit more about their lifestyle changes. And your website, Paul, you can, anybody that wants to contact you can, for more info or whatever, can contact you through it.
Well, at the moment, there's work being done on the website,
Okay.
so it's not actually, you can't just click on and see it, but the Facebook page is there as Paul Allen K Nutrition.
Okay, Paul Allen K Nutrition. And as Paul reminded us when he came in, it was like Alan. So Paul Allen K Nutrition.
Yeah, that's right.
Very good. So, and thank you to our viewers for watching in this afternoon, and to anybody watching back. And we wish you all to have a great week. Weather's changing a bit, but hopefully the days are getting a bit brighter, and we'll be moving into the springtime, which is always a nice time for change as well. So until next week, I'll be in with Rowan on Thursday morning having another chat on Destination Uri's morning show, and then we'll be back next week on Destination Wellbeing.